Hey, what's up, guys? Blaine Duncan here from Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. Welcome to episode number 28. This is my solo episode. Austin talked last week. If you watched that episode, he talked a little bit about how we're doing a little bit of we'll call it a summer break for Austin and I. And last week I was off. This week, Austin is off. But next week, we will be back with full brotherly content coming at you for Halloween Lives. This is episode number 28. You saw last week in episode number 27, Austin talked about his top 10 favorite scenes from the Halloween franchise. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing in this episode. It was a lot of fun for me to actually sit back and watch Austin's episode because although I knew a lot of those scenes that he had that were his favorites, I think at the end of the day, some of them really surprised me. We'll see how mine matches up. Obviously, if you guys like this, let us know in the comments. Give us a like, subscribe, follow, everything like that. Obviously, hit us up on Instagram. And let's get right into it. I think we're just about there. Also, I did want to mention we've got a really exciting show coming up next week. We already have it planned out. There's some really exciting Halloween news out there in the world of the Halloween franchise. So we're going to hit you up with that news. Some of it you may have heard, some of it may be brand new. So make sure you guys tune in next week as well for episode number 29 of the Halloween Lives podcast with Michael Myers. Okay, here we go. We're going to start out top 10 franchise, favorite franchise moments. And I'm going to start out with a movie that is not really one of my favorites in the series, but it's a scene that every time it comes on, I'm like, man, I got to watch this thing because it's just a badass, brutal kill scene. And just the whole build up to the kill is fantastic. And what I'm talking about is I'm calling it the Rachel dance scene, the Rachel Crothers dance scene from Halloween 5. It's the scene that there's a song called Romeo or Romeo, Romeo. I believe it's by a musical artist named Becca, whoever the hell that is. And she created this song that is in the movie Halloween 5. It's just a great scene. It's a fantastic scene. Not only are you getting really your first true look at Rachel on the screen as sort of this major character that we obviously saw from Halloween 4, but you're also getting her death scene as well. Now, we've talked about it in the podcast that we really wish they would have kept her alive. We wish they would have carried her on further throughout at least the film. I understand if she had to go, if she had to die. But at the end of the day, man, I absolutely hated seeing her get killed so early on in that film. And I think there was a lot more that they could have done with that character of Rachel Crothers. But there's just something about that scene that I love. Number one, it's Halloween day. She's excited. She's kind of got, Jamie is obviously at this point, Jamie is in the children's, mental hospital. And so Rachel is excited. She's going to be, getting ready to be with Jamie. And then obviously Michael sneaks in. And what I love about this scene mostly is just the creep factor of Michael, because you see him stalk her throughout the house. You see these point of view shots as he's watching her, run up the stairs. And then obviously as he's moving around the house, there's even this really great scene where you see him in the background and he's in there. Now, obviously you also have the dog Max, who plays a big part of this scene. And, Dr. Loomis calls up Rachel because Jamie is having one of these visions. And he's saying basically like, what's going on with Max? Where's Max? And she's like, well, he was chasing a squirrel. And then he's like, you got to get out of the house. You got to leave. So she takes off. And the one thing I don't like about that scene is obviously as she leaves, we find out that Max was in fact just chasing after a squirrel, and that, he wasn't necessarily after the shape himself, Michael Myers. But then you get these two freaking weirdo cops that come walking in and you get that goofy ass clown music. That's where the scene ends for me, where it's like, oh, that's a really bad moment in that film that I don't know why they did it. It wasn't even so much the character of the police, because I think they added, a different element to that film and to that scene. And you obviously end up seeing them get killed later on in the film in the Tower Farm scene. But, and I will also say, Halloween 2018 also kind of added that same element where you had the two cops who were sitting outside the house, outside Lori's house, and you had sort of this funny interaction between the two of them, one of them being Christopher Nelson. So I don't know if they were kind of trying to give a nod to those characters in Halloween 5 or not, but I didn't like that part. But ultimately, at the end of the day, what I just loved about this scene was I loved how creepy Michael, was, how he stalked Rachel through the house, and ultimately she dies, and that's really too bad. As I mentioned, I would have loved to have seen that character continue on, and whether she survived the film or not, who's to say that they would have ever brought her back, whether it was for part 6 or another film. But to at least have seen her maybe sacrifice herself in a way for Jamie, I think that would have been probably preferred for me, and I might have liked that film just a little bit more. We've talked about it. Halloween 5, not one of my favorite films. Still love it as part of the franchise, but definitely towards the bottom tier of my list. So that was number 10. Going to number 9, this is a scene from another movie that is not a favorite of mine at all. And I'm trying to remember back exactly where it landed for me in my rankings, but I do know that it was one of my bottom 3. And it's the scene from Halloween Resurrection. And I've talked about this scene before, that I think there's something so cool, so magical about it. It's the scene where the kid runs up onto the Myers porch. The sun is setting, and the kid runs up onto the Myers porch, and he sets a pumpkin there and then runs away. And it's just as the crew is really starting their investigation, and you're getting this first look at what is happening inside the Myers house. Now, the reason why I love that scene so much is because, like I do with most films, I almost try to put myself in that film, in that scene, in that setting. And I often think to myself, if this was real, if the Myers house was in fact real, and there had been this horrific, tragic murder, and this serial killer was out on the loose, what better way to try to keep the boogeyman at bay than to present him with a glowing jack-o'-lantern on Halloween night? And I think about that as like, if you were a kid growing up in Haddonfield, you obviously have the stories of the Haddonfield boogeyman, and I could just picture the kids all talking about like, what's going to keep the boogeyman away? Well, maybe it's putting a jack-o'-lantern out on the front porch on Halloween night. I just love that scene. It's a very, very brief, short clip, but it is one of those scenes in that film for me that no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm kind of half paying attention to the movie or not, maybe I'm texting, maybe I'm on, social media, whatever it might be, when that scene happens, I got to stop and watch it because it's just so cool. You're getting this build up, this anticipation for the investigation that's about to happen. And it's Halloween night. Michael is back. We've already seen him in several scenes up to this point. You got people who are inside of his house, and he's pissed off, and he's back and ready to kill some kids. So that is number 9 on my list. Again, it's a very brief scene, but it's one that I love nonetheless, and it makes me stop, as do all of these scenes. So kind of to reiterate that, I think we all have those moments in the film, in any of the films, even the classic 1978. There are some moments in that I don't want to say are dull, because there's nothing dull about Halloween 1978, but there are scenes that we are maybe just not as invested in as you're watching it. So you look down at your phone for a quick text message, maybe grab some popcorn, whatever it might be. These scenes are scenes that I cannot miss when I'm watching any of them. So that is number 9. I may have said number 8 before. I don't remember. But that was number 9 on my list. Number 8. So once again, going back to Halloween 5, this is a scene that I don't know why I love it so much. I've talked about it on the show before. I'm talking about the Tower Farm party scene. And I just think this is such a fantastic, well-done scene. We've obviously seen the buildup of what Michael is doing, that Michael is back in Haddonfield, that he didn't die at the end of part 4. We've seen some really awesome, really gruesome deaths, like the death of Mike, when Mike takes that like hook thing to the face, that gardening tool or whatever the hell it is. You've already seen that scene. You've also already seen at this point the scene where Michael is driving Mike's hot rod, which I think was just so well done, and just a fantastic scene. And obviously you get the whole cookie woman thing. But fast forward then to the Tower Farm party. I think about what it would be like to be a high school kid in Haddonfield, and maybe your parents aren't big fans of the holiday because 10 years earlier, or 11 years earlier, I guess in the case of Halloween 5, they lived through the traumatic events that took place in Halloween, or on Halloween night, 1978. And maybe these kids aren't really allowed to celebrate Halloween in the way that they want to, because if you would fast forward, rewind 10 years, these kids would have been trick-or-treating age in 1978. So maybe their parents are a little bit more protective of them, these high school kids, and they don't want them to go out. They don't want them to celebrate this holiday. But what do? Like all good high school kids, they break the rules. They don't listen to their parents, and they throw this big party out at the Tower Farm, which is a great Halloween party. Tons of people. Everybody's in costume, and you obviously see, once again, we see the cops again that we saw earlier in the film, the two goofball cops. They end up dying later on in that scene. But specifically, the part of that Tower Farm scene that I just love so much is the Sam and Spitz scene, where they go into the barn. The magic is about to happen for them. And, we've obviously seen the buildup of that. Sam has kind of talked about Samantha. She's talked about that this is the big night for her. And I think that's such a great scene, because to me, there's something incredibly creepy and something very just scary about the idea of being stalked in this old ass barn. Like, I think there's something very creepy there. And they do a really good job of building that scene up. Michael is there. Okay. And you get some sort of some jump scares that make you believe that both of them are about to get killed. But that doesn't happen, and then obviously we see them. They lay down in the hay or the straw or whatever it is, would be itchy as shit, and they start doing their deal. And that's when Spitz gets killed. I believe it's a pitchfork that goes through his back. I'm almost positive it's a pitchfork that goes through his back, and Sam gets splattered with blood, and she takes off running. And Michael comes back and he just gives her the big old slash. And you don't even necessarily see her death scene, but you see the blood spray across the hay bales. And just a great scene. Like, I think when you think about just a desolate farm, this party is happening probably within 150, 200 feet of this barn. Who knows how close the barn was, but this party's happening where all these people are out having a good time. And inside, these kids are getting whacked. And then you move forward to the scene where the two cops are talking, and he's. I think there's some conversation at that point about, like, does that sound different to you? Does this something weird? And I think it was because they had just heard Sam scream, and she gets killed. So I love that scene. I've talked about it before. I love the character of Samantha. I just think she did so much for that film and brought some really good life, or some new life to that film in a way that a lot of characters didn't. And yeah, that's my number 8, because I love that scene so much. Number 7 is we're now going to fast forward to 2018. And this is going to be I'm calling it the Oscar/Allison/ Mr. Elrod's backyard scene. And you guys know exactly what I'm talking about. They're walking home from this party, Oscar and Allison, and they're having this conversation. And Allison is obviously super upset because her boyfriend, she just caught him making out with some chick dressed like a tiger at the Halloween dance at school. And, you're getting this buildup, and you kind of have already started putting the pieces together a little bit that maybe Oscar has a thing for Allison. And he's like, dude, this is my moment, man. You just broke up with your boyfriend. What a better time to, swoop in and steal your love than when you're pissed off and you're angry and you're standing in some stranger's backyard, right? So Oscar, he's like, Allison, I could be good to you. I could be your boy. I could be your man. And she really wants nothing to do with it. She's like, go away from me. I don't want anything to do with you right now. And so she leaves him. He falls. He stumbles backwards. And that's when you get this awesome scene where the floodlight in the backyard turns on, and you see Michael standing in the back. And Oscar says something about, he acknowledges Mr. Elrod, which is a callback or a throwback to Halloween 2. And you get, that it's Michael. It's not Mr. Elrod. It's Michael. And you get this awesome scene where he's like, and I'm paraphrasing here. I don't know exactly what his quote is, but he's like, have you ever wanted a girl so badly and you just couldn't have her? Or he says something along those lines. And it's just like, oh, I see what you did there. And I like that. We often shit on some of the writing and some of the dialogue in those 3 David Gordon Green trilogy films. That is not one of them. I love that line because it's obviously making reference to the fact that Michael is after Laurie. It's all he really wants is he wants to kill her and he can't have her. So it's that whole scene. Now, obviously what happens, and everybody knows this because you've seen this film, but the light turns out and then it comes back on and all of a sudden Michael is standing way closer to Oscar than he was before. And you're like, oh, this dude's about to get whacked. He's about to get whacked. And I like it. I like where you're going with this. And then the light goes out again. It comes back on and Michael is up in Oscar's business. And I think he tries stabbing him or stabs at him. Oscar takes off running and he tries to climb a wrought iron fence with really sharp, pointy spikes. And God, you just never do that in a horror movie. Oscar, didn't you ever watch a horror movie? My goodness, your mother did not treat you right. She did not teach you right. Don't climb sharp fences in horror movies, okay? He climbs up this fence. He slips, he falls, takes the fence through the face, gruesome death scene. And then Allison comes running back because she hears the struggle. She hears what has happened or what's transpiring with Oscar screaming for help. She comes back and we get the classic, The Shape hunts Allison music. And you see that she sees Michael is there. She sees Oscar. And I remember watching that scene in the theater. And up until, and I've been very honest about this, that when I first saw Halloween 2018, I was not a huge fan. I was kind of like, man, this is sort of missing the mark for me. Like, I don't feel it. There had been a lot of great moments, don't get me wrong, but it didn't feel right to me. There was just not enough great moments to make me feel good about it at that point. That music hit, The Shape hunts Allison, or The Shape stalks Allison. I think it's hunts. The Shape hunts Allison. And I was like, holy shit. All right. Let's do this thing, because you knew it. Michael was back. He was back and he was going after Allison, and just a classic scene. One that in my mind will stand up against most scenes throughout this franchise. And just again, one that I have to stop and I have to watch every time it's on, just for that feeling of, holy shit, Michael's here and he's going to kill Allison. He's going after her. He's seen her. And I just love that scene. So that is number 7 on my list of favorite moments from the Halloween franchise, favorite scenes from the Halloween franchise, whatever you want to call it. Moving on to number 6. And you guys are going to start to think I'm perverted here or something, because there seems to be a theme with naked women in the first few picks that I've had, but I promise it has nothing to do with it. They're just great scenes. Somehow the sex scenes in these films, something bad is going to happen, because, I mean, as they explained in Scream, if you're not a virgin, you're going to die. So this scene that I'm talking about is probably my favorite kill scene. And I think we talked about this, my favorite kill scene from the entire franchise. And I'm talking the Bob and Linda scene from the original 1978 film. Obviously, it starts out when you get Bob and Linda. They're doing the dirty up in the room. The jack-o'-lantern is sitting there. He lasts for 7.6 seconds, and then he is off of her. They smoke a cigarette. She's like, hey, go get me a beer. And he's like, fuck you. You go get me a beer. She's like, go get me a beer. It's like, dude, just go get her a beer. Go get her a beer. So he gets up. He goes out of the room. She sits there. I think she starts like filing her nails or something like that. He goes down. And I think, goes downstairs to get more beer. And I think that's when we get, that is when we get this awesome scene where that I think he knows in that scene that something is weird, because he even is like, Annie, I think he says something about Annie because he thinks something is up. And that's when Michael bursts out. He freaking is choking him out. He raises him up and he freaking stabs him against the wall, just like Michelle Dawson in Halloween Ends. Obviously a callback or a throwback to the original 1978 with Bob. And it is just a sick ass kill, because then we sit there and we watch, and this is the first time we get the classic head cock of Michael Myers looking at this thing hanging on the wall, admiring it, looking at what he's just done. And then from there, we cut back and we go back to Linda. She's still in bed, and you see the door swing open, and here is ghost sheet ghost Michael Myers. He's wearing the ghost costume. He's got the holes, and then he's wearing Bob's glasses, which is freaking just an awesome look. And so then obviously she's like, hey, did you get my beer or what? And she gets pissed off. She gets up. She goes and she calls Lori on the phone. She's talking to Lori, and at the same time, my man Michael, he approaches her from behind and he starts to choke her out. She tries pulling her. She does pull that sheet off of his head. You obviously get that full look at Michael. Eventually he chokes her out. She dies, drops to the floor. And that's when Michael picks up the phone and he just sits there and he just listens. And at the same time, Lori is like, what's going on? What's happening? And she knows that something is up, right? She knows that this is no longer just a Halloween trick, that there's just too much shit going on tonight, and I need to go and investigate and see exactly what it is that's happening. And that's when she obviously makes her way, I believe it's over to the Doyle house. She makes her way over to the Doyle house. And that's that scene. And I freaking love it. I've talked about on the show how much I love it. And it just really is. It's my favorite death scene from the entire film. I think Austin sort of talked about how if he had to show one scene to anyone who knows nothing about Michael Myers, anyone who knows nothing about the Halloween franchise, I believe he had mentioned that it was the scene from Halloween 2018. I'll call it the long montage, where Michael walks around, he grabs the hammer, he goes in, he smashes the lady on the head. That whole scene, you guys know what I'm talking about. I think if I were to do that same thing, and I think that's a great scene also to show a new fan or somebody who's never seen these films before, but I think if I were to show any scene, I think I would go after the Bob and Linda death scenes, because it's creepy. You've obviously got that really, really kind of like just that creepy darkness that's going on in this house. You got the jack-o'-lantern glow in there, Michael dressing up. And that's also the first time that we're seeing Michael toy with his victims. And you're seeing that in a couple different ways. Obviously Bob with the head cock, and then obviously when he wears the sheet and he's kind of toying with Linda a little bit. So that's my number 6. Love that scene. PJ Souls knocked that role out of the park, and so happy that we got to see that scene in that film. Now, moving on to number 5, a scene that I just touched on, a scene that is a favorite of Austin's. That is that classic montage scene from Halloween 2018. So yes, this scene of Bob and Linda falls further down on my list, but Halloween 2018, this scene in itself is also, as Austin said, it really just, it's the whole picture of Halloween. Number one, they did such a great job of making this feel like the most awesome Halloween night ever, because at first you see, Michael come back, he bumps into the kids and they're like, sorry, mister. And then they move around him. And as you stop and you see that scene, you see Michael stand there, like that neighborhood is decorated. There are a shit ton of kids out trick-or-treating. You're hearing the background noise. You're hearing the giggling, the kids running down the streets. The whole thing is glowing orange. There's jack-o'-lanterns and decorations all over the place. And you can just tell immediately from the way that Michael moves his head so quickly, he is on a mission. And you see him be absolutely brutal and ruthless. And I think that's when, in 2018, that was really the scene where I knew that this was going to be a little bit of a different Michael Myers than maybe we had seen in other films. Just a very brutal Michael Myers. Only in comparison to maybe Tyler Mane and then George P. Wilbur in Halloween Part 6. There was just a different way that Michael his aggressiveness and just the way that he went after people. So you get that scene where you see the shadow and he moves into the garage or the shed or whatever it is, and you see him reach down, he grabs that hammer, and then he moves into the house. You see the lady with the curling, the curlers in her hair. She's cooking in the kitchen, doing her deal. Obviously, very much a throwback or callback once again to the Elrod, Mrs. Elrod in Halloween 2. And she goes off camera. Michael just goes into the kitchen. He stops, he looks at her, and he turns and he follows her. And then you hear him smashing the shit out of her head. And we move around the corner, and there she is. She's laying on the table. She's bleeding all over the freaking place. And then we follow Michael, and he goes into the room with the baby. And you're like, "Ooh, don't do that, dude. Spare us that one." Like, is he really gonna kill a baby right now? And he doesn't. He's got some mercy. He's got some grace. He's like, I don't need to kill a baby. And he moves outside. He goes back out the house. He walks out of the house. And that's when he makes his way. I think maybe that's when you see the shadow. I think that's when you see the shadow. And you see the shadow move along the house. And you see the lady talking on the phone, the woman talking on the phone. And he comes in and she goes and looks out the blinds. I think she closes them actually. And that's when he freaking jams the knife right through the back of her head. And that is a brutal, brutal kill scene, and one that, again, I will stop and watch that scene every single time that I watch Halloween 2018 because it's, number one, it's a great scene. And I think Austin mentioned this, like, how many takes did it take to get that scene? That would be a great thing to know, because if there were any edits or cuts in it, you don't really pick up on it. It's just a very long extended montage scene. Now, what I will say about that scene that I did not like, and we've talked about this before, is the fact that they showed that in an extended scene as a preview of the film. And I feel like that scene, in a way, is magical, and as great as it was, it lost something because I didn't get to experience that in the theater. I was either watching it on my computer at home or my phone or wherever it was that I first saw it. And that is, again, that took away from some of the magic that I felt in watching that scene, because I had already seen it, and God damn it, I would have just loved to have seen that thing up on the big screen for the first time and been like, okay, this is it. And maybe that's why I loved that whole scene with Allison and Oscar, and when, Oscar takes the rod through the face. Like, maybe that's why I loved it, because that scene was so brutal and, so graphic at the same time. And I hadn't seen that yet. So maybe that's why I love that scene so much. But that extended Halloween night scene, the montage, you can't beat it. It's a brutal scene, and one that I definitely will stop and watch every single time I watch that film. Moving on to number 4, we're making our way down the list here. I'm talking about the scene. I called it, it's almost time, kids. The scene from Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. It's the scene where you get all the trick-or-treaters who are going out trick-or-treating. You're getting that, I believe it's Tommy Lee Wallace, his voiceover of the commercial saying, "It's almost time, kids." And you're seeing all these kids going out and going trick-or-treating. It absolutely is one of those scenes where you have this moment where you're like, something really, really bad is about to happen. That something really bad is about to happen, and there's nothing you could do about it. That these kids, all these kids are wearing these masks, and that's kind of the point of that scene. You're seeing the kids skateboard down the road, you're down the sidewalk, you're seeing the kids walking down the sidewalk with the commercial playing on the TVs. You get that classic sunset scene, which, my God, if that is not the most beautiful scene out of a Halloween film, I don't know that there is another one. It is just so awesome because you get the silhouettes of those kids moving down kind of that ridge or whatever it is that they're walking on. I think it says Arizona. I think they're Phoenix, Arizona in that scene, but you're getting that bright orange or bright red sunset. Classic scene. You see that on the front cover or on the poster of that film. And it's just such a great scene because I think there's this darkness that's looming. And much like any of the other Halloween films, there's a huge difference from when it's Halloween day versus when we go to Halloween night, because once we get to night, whether you're talking about Halloween 1978 or Halloween 3 Season of the Witch, that once you get to nighttime, shit is about to get real. And in this case, we're talking millions of children around the world are going to die because of this mask maker. And all these kids are wearing these masks, and there's just nothing that anybody can do about it. Obviously, you see at the end of that film, you see Tom Atkins, screaming into the phone, and he's saying, "Stop it, stop it, stop it." And you don't know what actually ends up happening. And I think that's when we talked about Halloween Season of the Witch a few episodes ago. I think that was one of the reasons why I think that's just such a classic scene, is because you just don't know what happens. It's such a good cliffhanger, and you got to imagine that he wasn't able to save those kids. I mean, would that even be possible if he's, whether he's talking to the operator or whoever he's talking to, were they able to switch all those channels? And why would you believe some dude who's just calling up and saying, you got to pull it off the air, right? Kids are going to die. Just that scene in itself is really good. And I believe that one made Austin's list as well. But I just love that It's Almost Time Kids scene. Very, very fun scene for me, and I have to stop and watch it every time it happens, because once again, that things are about to get really, really ugly. Just a great scene. Absolutely great scene. So that's number 4 on my list. Moving down to number 3, we're going to go back to Halloween 1978. And there's a scene where you have Dr. Loomis and Sheriff Brackett inside of the Myers house. And at this point, Sheriff Brackett is kind of like, you can just tell he's not digging what Loomis is putting down. You really, you see that sort of disbelief in his eyes and in his words and what he's saying. And you get this whole explanation from Dr. Loomis about, watching this 6-year-old boy, and you get the devil's eyes, the blackest eyes. You get that whole scene, and all of that is happening inside of the Myers house. And there is something incredibly creepy about that scene to me, because that Michael is out there. At least we know that Michael's out there. Sheriff Brackett may not be thinking that Michael's out there. And you also know at this point that Michael has been in the house. Michael is there. You have the dead dog that is there, and Loomis, references the dog and says something about he's been here once, or he'll come back again, or something along those lines. And it's just like, that is, in my mind, such a creepy scene, because this is really the first time that you're really getting a lot of detail about what led up to this moment and why Loomis is so obsessed with that whole character of Michael Myers, and why it is that he's literally spent his entire life trying to really uncover this evil and make sure that it stays contained, that it stays locked up. But obviously, the gorilla got out of the cage. We saw that, and he's now tracking him. And he knows he's going to come back to the Myers house. It's his childhood home, and it's a place that he is familiar with. And then obviously we see, like I said, that the dog is dead already, and it's like, oh, he's putting the pieces of the puzzle together. You see the culmination. You see we're starting to go up the roller coaster. The roller coaster is starting to get to the top. And that's when Brackett, I think, starts to get a little bit more creeped out. And he's like, all right. And so I love that scene so much. It's just a really creepy, classic, iconic scene for me, and a scene that I think everybody who is a horror fan has heard that Loomis line at some point, where he talks once again about, the blackest eyes, the devil's eyes. And he gives that whole kind of speech and that whole message to Sheriff Brackett, trying to convince him that, hey, what's going on here? This is not a man. This is evil. He's purely and simply evil. Obviously, Sam Loomis, that character is so iconic to this franchise. Donald Pleasance knocked that role out of the park, and I think it really starts with that you see what a great character, and obviously what a great character choice or actor choice that you got with Donald Pleasance in that, because he sells it so well as like he's passionate. He wants to stop this guy, and he knows it's not just an escaped mental patient, that there's something more there, and that the entire town of Haddonfield is in grave danger until Michael Myers is either captured or killed. So that one makes number 3 on my list. Moving to number 2, another movie that may surprise some people. It's a movie that I really do enjoy. It's grown on me over the years, but I'm calling it the Halloween festival or Halloween carnival scene from Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. And this is the scene where you get Mrs. Blankenship telling the story of the Druids, and at the same time you're getting this voiceover. Well, first off, you see this lightning, you see the lightning, and then Michael standing in the background of the window as she's talking. But this is also happening at the same time, sort of this voiceover of Mrs. Blankenship as she's telling Danny this whole story, really about the history of Halloween and why Halloween is what it is. And at the same time, you're getting the Tommy Doyle character played by Paul Rudd. He's walking through this carnival, this festival, and you see people running, and they're in costumes, and there's bonfires. And man, if I could go to any sort of Halloween festival or party like that on Halloween night, where it's like this outdoor event and there's a ton of people celebrating Halloween, I would be in seventh heaven. And like I said, you get this scene as Mrs. Blankenship is talking. You get this moment where the lightning flashes in the background. You see Michael standing there in the window. He's sort of covered, I guess, by the curtain or the whatever the blinds or whatever that's on that window. But you see that he's there, and it's just a great scene. I don't know why. It's like probably most people are like, really, that's number 2 on your list? And it's like, yeah, I get it. It's for most people, that's probably not a scene that would make it to number 2, but it's a scene that I love so much. I love that character, Tommy Doyle. We've talked about that in a previous episode. Austin and I kind of said, like, hey, if you were one character, if you could have one person kind of describe who you would be in a movie, I think Paul Rudd, Tommy Doyle would be my guy. Like I just feel a deep connection to that character in many ways. And you have him sort of figuring out what's going on. He knows that Michael is back. He's put the pieces of the puzzle together. And, you obviously then, Tommy Doyle, Paul Rudd, he kind of walks around, and you see the classic scene where the girl is wearing that pink, foo-foo, princess dancer dress, whatever the hell it is. And she's like, "Mommy, it's raining. It's raining, Mommy. It's raining red." And he goes and he stares at her, and you see, like red drops all over her. And at the same point, then you get boom, the DJ, the douchebag DJ. I forget his name at the moment, but the douchebag DJ, he falls out of the tree, and he's all wrapped up. And I think he's wrapped up in like lights, and he falls down, and Tommy Doyle's like, "Holy shit." And at that moment, he obviously knows then that Michael is definitely back. And he has started his killing spree. And then obviously Tommy Doyle and Dr. Loomis connect, and from there, the rest is history. But it's a great scene. And honestly, I had a really tough time because there's another scene in this movie that I would say is an honorable mention for me. And that is the scene of when there's, again, from Halloween 6, when they are in the operating room and Michael goes in and just starts slashing people. Such a great scene. You're seeing the flashes and you're seeing all this, the screaming, and you're seeing the guys, the people smash up against the window and the blood splatter. And it's just very, very good scene. That is definitely an honorable mention for me especially from that film, but again, for the whole franchise. But that Halloween festival scene, you can't beat it. It's just so fantastic in my mind. And again, you guys might be going, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, but I love it. It's a scene that I will watch every single time I watch that film. And I can't say enough good things about it. So now we are officially at my number 1 pick. And this too was a scene that Austin had on his list. It is the opening title sequence from Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers. That iconic title sequence of when you're getting the different shots, the different, you're seeing, first off, it kind of opens up and you're seeing all these different, like, I'll call it like farm scenes, like these autumn country scenes. And you've got like the scarecrow with like the jack-o'-lantern that he's sitting on he's sitting on a tractor. You get I don't even know what it is, like a six arm kind of like little figure kind of thing, which I don't know what freaking creepy kid would build something like that, but I'd like to know you. And then obviously I love like the mailbox scene. So this is a project that I've wanted to do for a while. I want to like get a mailbox, like an old mailbox. I want to put the paper skull on the front of it and get like some fake weeds from like, some hobby store or like a Michael's or something like that, and build that box, because I just love that scene where you're getting that mailbox. In the background, you've got the country setting. There's a little bit of there's a farm off in the distance, but the sky is gray. And I've talked about this before on this show, but I think it's, all good Halloween films present Michael as like this storm in a way. And like the storm is coming. Michael is the storm. And I think as we see that opening title sequence, you kind of get that feeling like things are very ominous. Things are very, they're not looking good for the town of Haddonfield right off the bat. And obviously we are reintroducing Michael Myers to a whole new audience at this point, because we had just come off of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. So we know Michael is back. You get that in the opening title, the return of Michael Myers. They are not effing around. And you know that Michael is coming back, and he's got some people in Haddonfield that he's going to go after. But of all the scenes in all of the franchise, this is one that I love. I cannot say enough good things about it. As a matter of fact, I will watch that scene. Like, I'll pull that scene up on YouTube, I bet 30 times throughout the year, because I just love that, whatever it is, that minute and 45 seconds or whatever that is, that scene, that opening title sequence. For those of you who are on social media, would highly encourage you to go check out Witching Season Films. That director, Michael Bailiff, he actually went and recreated every single one of those shots. They were all shot in Utah. He went out and recreated it. And he's actually got like a side-by-side that he created of those two scenes, where you see what it looks like present day, and you see like what it looks like back in 1988. In that opening title sequence. If you've not seen it, go check out Witching Season Films. Go check out Witching Season Films, even if you have seen that what he did, because love what they're doing. We're hoping to have Michael on the program sometime. Such a great, so awesome what he's doing. And I'd love to see him actually get a crack at doing one of these films, because he obviously embodies and can capture the essence of Halloween and what it does. So, Michael, if you're watching this, dude, we want to get you on the show. We'd love to have you. But yeah, so that is my number one scene of the entire franchise. Just love it. It is so impactful. And Halloween 4 is a film that I only watch on Halloween. I've talked about that before. 1978, I only watch on Halloween. Halloween 2, I've started really only watching that on Halloween as well. But then Halloween 4 and 5 as well. Like those 4 films, I watch almost back to back on the Halloween and Halloween night. And I usually end up watching Halloween 4 sometime mid-morning, maybe early afternoon at the latest. And dude, when I see that scene come on my TV, it's like the day is here. It is Halloween. I have waited 364 days to get here. And Jesus, am I going to love every single second of this day, because it's my favorite day of the year. And I get to watch films like this, films that I love so much, but I wait to watch them until one special night of the year or special day of the year. And that only happens, obviously, on Halloween. So that is my top 10 favorite franchise moments, favorite scenes of the franchise, however you want to say it. Those are my top 10 moments. I would absolutely love to hear what you guys think, what your favorite moments are from the franchise. So if you've not done that yet, if you didn't do that in Austin's video, in the comments in Austin's video, please give us a like and drop your comment below. Let me know. At least you don't even have to go into 10. Give me your top 3, your top 5. You could even just give me your favorite scene from the entire Halloween franchise. I would be okay with that as well. But I would really like to hear from you guys. What scenes do you guys enjoy from this franchise? And there's so many to pick from. I think Austin talked about this. Initially, we had talked about just doing 5 scenes. And I was the one, I actually said to him, I said, hey, let's do 5 scenes. Let's each pick 5. We'll go back and forth. And I started like writing down what scenes I was going through in my head, movie by movie, almost scene by scene in my head. I was trying to think of like all these different scenes. And I was like, there's no freaking way. I had such a hard time just picking 10 scenes that if I were to try to pick 5, I just would not be giving enough credit to so many other great scenes throughout this franchise. And again, there are so many more. We could do a top 100, and maybe that's what we will do sometime. Maybe we'll do a top 100 moments from the Halloween franchise. Do an extra special long episode. Who knows? Maybe another live episode. Wink. Just thinking on the fly here. But let's think on those. Let us know what your favorite moments are from the Halloween franchise. Like I said, drop those comments below. Give this video a like. And my God, if you've not subscribed at this point, please support us. Let us know that you like what we're doing. We'll obviously be back next week with episode number 29. I told you guys we've got some cool Halloween news that we're going to be bringing to you. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was fun. Austin had the week off. Last week I was off, but we're coming back together. Summer break is over. We are on the train and we are heading nonstop for October 31st, Halloween. Guys, this is Halloween Lives, the podcast of Michael Myers. I am Blaine Duncan, and thank you so much for listening to me ramble for the last, where are we at? About 45 minutes. So thank you for giving up 45 minutes of your day. I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you guys so much, and we will see you next time.